I call to order the special meeting of the City Council for this July 16th at 5:30. Roll call, please.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Locken. Here. McMartin.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Section 3, or item 3.1 is a update to the personnel code on first reading. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, we will go ahead and vote.
Save. Thank you.
The motion passed unanimously.
Very well. On to item 3.2. This is the city manager's presentation of the budget and or of his budget recommendation. And so I'll turn it over to you, city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. First, I'd just like to point out we do have a recommended action here that is posted on the agenda that states it is recommended City Council adopt the 2027 preliminary budget for the city of Minot. That is not necessary for tonight nor intended to be, the council adopting my recommendations tonight. We do have two further council meetings scheduled prior to this being necessary to be adopted by City Council and getting to the county by the 10th of August. So it's not necessary to adopt the preliminary budget tonight.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessam.
Thank you. So Tom, one of the things with that, and I appreciate that, but it has been practice that we don't really touch this, at least the last couple rounds. Now, I haven't agreed with that. I mean, I think if there's something we know now, we should certainly update it. And I guess I just wanted your perspective, because you and your team have done such a great job on our timing, where we actually have the opportunity to have some conversation and to make some adjustments if there's something obvious. Is that your intent? If there's something between now and August 10th that we believe as a council we should adjust, even for the preliminary, that we should?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, absolutely. So again, there's time for questions at the end, and then any modifications. I mean, us as staff, we know there's some corrections to be made in this huge preliminary budget, especially in the rates and fees. There's some changes that need to be made, but absolutely, there is opportunity for that. But the point being, not necessary to adopt this preliminary budget tonight. We do have a couple, 2.5 weeks to do some more lifting.
If I can continue, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
To the city attorney, I believe that we're on a little bit different footing with how the process works between now and approving the budget in October. Legislature has made some adjustments, and I want to make sure that we're all clear on that. So the preliminary budgets that were done in the past, there was a mailer that was done by the county that had that information, and it went out and it said, here's the budget hearing and here's what the property tax is going to look like. Am I correct that they will no longer be doing that mailer? Is that correct?
Alderman Blessel, members of the council, I'd have to just double check with them and confirm. I don't want to confirm without having checked in with them on it. My assumption is that they are not going to, but like I said, they can always still continue to send that out without.
Okay.
I don't know if finance has
Mr.
confirmed
Mayor,
or.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, they still have to send out the notice indicating the public hearing date for each public entity. It just doesn't include the preliminary tax statement like had been sent out in prior years where it said increase, or I don't think it said decrease, it just said increase if you went up, and it had to be in red font. Now they just send out a notice indicating each entity's public hearing date.
Okay. And so if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, and
Go ahead.
thank you for that, Dave, because that, I didn't remember that facet, but that makes sense. So again, I just for my colleagues, you know, the discussion we have right now, as we start to set this bar and set what the public needs to know about, if we expect them to come and talk to us about it, we need to be clear about what that's actually going to look like. And that's part of my questions for the city manager is, you know, we're fooling ourselves if we think we're going to leave it as it is and it's okay to just let it go through. If we think that there are things that should change, we should do that as the steps go by. And so I think it's important. In the past, they would send that out. It would set the high water mark, and in my mind, the public then could come to the hearing and say, "Hey, I don't agree. You guys need to lower this," right, or whatever that would be. The public isn't going to see that number now, so our discussion has to serve as that. What does that even look like? Are we looking at an increase? Are we looking at a decrease right now? So I think we need pretty robust discussion over the next couple meetings prior to that hearing.
Okay. City manager, back to you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of council, first, as you can see, I've asked our finance director, Dave Lakefield, our comptroller, Jenna Zielinski, and our Human Resource Director, Kelly Beck, to join us up on the dais tonight as they have some speaking roles. There are some portions of this presentation that they are the subject matter experts, and I'll lean on them. You know, I'll always, you know, I'm behind it, I support it, I've read it, but they know that subject matter better than I do, so I reach out to experts when needed. So with that, we'll get started. I want to thank all of you and the department heads and the team for the hard work. This has been a long journey. We started this in a budget session in January, and the team has really worked hard to find reductions, find efficiencies. They presented, department head presented to you all the week of the 22nd of June. Very valuable feedback. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate your attention to detail and the learning that we all did together with that. So with that, I'll go ahead and move on and get this started. As I mentioned a couple months ago, and I just want to lead it off here, you know, so what I've heard in my time as the city manager and even prior to that as assistant city manager is the importance and the focus on fiscal responsibility. I've also heard from the citizens in surveys of their priorities, which routinely and consistently focus on snow removal, street maintenance, and safety, public safety as a whole, so police, fire, traffic, code enforcement, all of those with our teams from public works and engineering. It's all about public safety. So I'll stay on that focus. That's kind of my mantra as well. What do I know? I know that we have constrained resources. I also know that we have competing priorities. We have a very diverse operation in the municipality world here in the city of Minot. Many different complicated matters, complex matters, and they're competing for the same resources sometimes. So it's our role to rack and stack those priorities, and I'll be presenting that to you tonight as I believe those priorities are at this point. I talked a little bit about efficiencies and effectiveness. I don't, ideally they go hand in hand, but they don't always, right? So you can become, more efficient in terms of doing things, a little bit better, a little bit quicker, maybe doesn't cost as much. But as I said, maybe it isn't a little bit better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So I just put that up. As I go through this, we oftentimes say, efficient and effective as it goes hand in hand. It doesn't necessarily. And I think, the discussions that we've had with you all over the past few weeks, you noticed some of that. This is our first go at with the 3% cap. It's an external mandate Obviously, it's something that we have to deal with this year and in the out years, and we'll address some of that impact here as we move on. Again, what do I believe? I believe public safety first and foremost. I believe individuals just want to feel safe in their city, feel safe in their neighborhood, have a ready and capable forces to respond when necessary. Whether that's a police force, a fire department. But my mantra, and you'll see that in the budget that I present tonight, is first and foremost, we need to make sure that we sustain and improve where necessary our public safety posture. Street maintenance, keep the good good. I mean, that's what Lance and his team try to do. I mean, we go out and do projects. There's a whole bunch of barrels and cones and everything going on this summer. And I appreciate everybody's patience with that, but it's about keeping the good good. We want to keep the major reconstruction projects to a minimum, like what we did with 16th Street last year. We want to keep the good good, so we need to keep focused on that. We do have aging infrastructure that's been identified by our city engineer, addressed in the capital improvement plan, but we got to stay on top of that. I believe we need to continue with our long-term projects. These are critical projects, NAS, flood protection. I believe we need to stay focused on that. And again, support economic development and quality of life programs wherever we can. So whether that's community contributions, whether that's the library, that's all part of what we can do to help benefit this community as well. And then status quo, in my opinion, it doesn't always mean that it stays flat. I mean, there is inflationary pressures. There's other things with that. But status quo also sometimes to me is going backwards a little bit. So I'm really proud of the team that I work with day in and day out, that they're aspirational and trying to do things better. Unfortunately, better often does cost more. But they've done a great job of reducing the budget, year over year, and you'll see that as we move forward. You'll also see, like I said in the book, on average, about 3 to 5%. There's some marginal increases in rates and charges, and we can have a further discussion about those, but nothing overly, that make you jump out of your chair on a rate change. But we'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, it's all about people. We have great people. Without the people, we couldn't do what we do. So we have great people who are taking care of great people. I mean, that's the beauty of it. So many of our staff actually reside here in the city, and they are also citizens. This goes along with our vision statement of building excellence with our community. So for me personally, we need to stay focused on taking care of them, ensuring that we are acquiring talent, we're developing talent, we're employing talent, we're retaining talent. Oftentimes that does come with a cost, competitive wages, benefits, be focused on their education and training and their professional development. And it's really all about finding the right balance as we do all of that. So this is just a big picture of kind of where we've been and where I propose we go, and we'll get in more detail. But again, so we were talking about back 6 months ago of trying to stay as close as we could to that 20.1 number. And believe me, we tried. That would have been about a 30% reduction in the general fund to get to that. So what you're seeing that I'm proposing is a property tax that does go up significantly, and we'll show the detail on that. But there's also a corresponding reduction in general fund cash reserve usage. So over time, that high water mark is 28.5 back in 2024. The number that I'm presenting is not as high as that number. Although, again, if we use reserves, it would be, but we budgeted for use of 3 million reserves in 2024. So that's just kind of a big picture where we've been and where I propose with this budget that we go. I'm going to pass the next couple slides. Dave Lakefield talked about this a few months back, and I just wanted him to kind of give an update of where we currently are and just the financial condition of the city. Dave?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just to walk through this slide a little bit, this just reconciles what we had anticipated, some time ago in the 26 budget, where we would end up at the end of the year, and kind of where we're at so far year to date and halfway through the budget year. As you remember, we budgeted to use a significant amount of general fund cash reserves, about $11.5 million. That number actually climbed a little bit due to some changes that didn't go through with the change to the economic development sales tax ordinance and some other things that were unfunded in the original budget. Right now, we're anticipating that if everything is fully executed in the budget, we'll use about $14.5 million of reserves in the general fund in the 2026 budget year. So this just brings up the information, what we had in cash at year end, what's already encumbered and committed, the reserve requirements, the 1/12 that is required by ordinance, as well as the additional 2/12 that we like to see to provide some cushion, what's anticipated to be spent in the budget year, leaving us at an unrestricted and available balance of about $5.6 million at the end of the year. So that's just one thing for consideration as we work through this budget. We've had a lot of discussion in the last year or so what that optimal number for the cash reserves is, and that's still part of this conversation as well. Just a reminder that some of the things that put some strains on us as we get closer and closer to that statutory number is it leaves us less ability to modify the budget during the year as things arise. And it also puts strains on cash flow when we have some of these projects or grants or these types of things that are on a reimbursement basis where we have to pay the bill and request reimbursement going forward. So it just creates a little bit of a additional strain on cash flow requirements.
Okay, big picture, final impacts of the budget. This is the general fund side. We'll get into the entire budget as we move on. But general fund, as you can see, year over year, proposing a budget that is about 6.6 million in addition in property taxes, 33% increase year over year. However, if you go back to that high water mark in 2024, it's there's a decrease in the dollar change, and there is a 6% less. So just kind of looking at where we were, 3 years ago, where we were in the last couple of years. Again, I'm proposing that we kind of balance that with an increase in property tax and less usage in the general fund reserves. That does impact our residents. It does impact those paying property taxes. So, on average, we expect an increase of go up to 447 versus 351 last year per $100,000 of property value. Our median assessment was 244 this year. So meaning in the median household, we would see about an increase of $234.31 for their property tax that was levied against the city. Just a reminder too, I think we had the slide up there. Again, just a general reminder, many know this, but many I think tend to forget, is for every dollar that our citizens are taxed in property tax, we project about 30% of that with this proposed budget would come to the city of Minot, with the rest of it going to Minot Public Schools, Ward County, and the parks. And the parks, again, is decreasing a bit because the addition of the half-cent sales tax that was approved. This slide kind of gives a bigger picture, and again, I applaud the team for understanding the direction and working hard towards getting to this. So yes, overall, general fund and the debt and community contributions, that has increased, and we'll show where. But when you look at the others that do receive some funding out of the property tax levy, you start with the Minot Public Library. They took the challenge and came in at a proposed reduced budget. Minot City Transit, Brian Harinka and team came in with a reduced, I'd almost call it a subsidy that we pay, because he's an operation, he charges fees, but the Minot International Airport, I mean, they're going down year over year. They're less reliant on property tax to run their operation. They're running like a business. This year, the proposed is $100,000 for them. And Rose Hill Cemetery, the team has done a lot of great work there, and they brought that down as well. And Dave, I want to push the next couple back to you, please.
All right, this next slide just shows the different sources of general fund revenue and some of the differences compared to from 26 to 2027. A lot of these have stayed fairly consistent in the last couple of years. The one thing I want to point out is underneath the 26 and 27 number is the total of all of the revenues for the general fund for each year, and it's gone down significantly. Primarily, that was reduced due to using Hub City funding on the 3rd Street project, which is the infrastructure project. So that funding was used in general fund last year. Now it's in a capital project, so it's not showing up in the 27 budget. That also is the main difference between the intergovernmental section of the revenue. So that's where that is, where we're at. In addition, we have a significantly reduced amount of cash reserves that are included in the budget. The next slide shows the general fund expenses. Again, similar illustration. This is broken down to by our functional expenses: public safety, highway and streets, and general government. The personnel numbers are in the small little circle within each section of the pie. So this just shows proportionately where the spending in the general fund is going. You'll see a slight reduction in highways and streets, a significant reduction in general government, and then an increase in public safety. The personnel numbers there are authorized positions, so they're only slightly different, and that's mainly due to the transfer of the code enforcement person from general government to public safety. So that's the main difference there.
And again, just a quick wrap up of the major departments in the general fund. So as you can see, police did increase, but we all knew that it would go up from 2026 to 2027 if in fact they were able to hire more personnel. So they have been able to increase that. And so their budget and their requirements that were briefed to you, I'm coming in with an 11.43% proposed increase, and I'll show here in a couple of minutes. That still isn't everything they want or need, and we may have to come back with some budget amendments during year of execution. Fire went up. I know there was some discussion about the 3rd fire inspector, so that is in the budget. So all of the positions that fire currently have, I'm recommending they keep all of their positions. And then you can see we had some slight decreases, and then the building safety and community development took a significant decrease, as well as traffic and street and engineering. This is just an example. I could throw this up for every department. Bottom line, they did not get everything that they came and fought for with me. Again, I'm just trying to balance out all of the different competing priorities and back to what I've heard from the community and from council over the last year. And so this is just an example of what their request was. is, and what I'm proposing funding. In some cases zero, in some cases significantly reducing, and this is about 136,000. But yes, what I'm reducing. Yes, the police department, it's all needed, right? So I'm not arguing with them. There's a good chance that some of this comes forward in a budget amendment, and we can have further discussion about all of this as we move forward. General fund equipment. This is Brian Banfield. He presented the vehicle and equipment replacement plan for this year for both general fund and for enterprise. On the general fund side, made some reductions here to take the ladder truck out of this particular budget. Again, not saying it's not needed. It just gets down to competing priorities and just how much do we have in terms of resources. Same with inspection. It's a sedan. It's necessary. Obviously, a lot easier to go buy a new sedan or replace the sedan when we need it. The ladder truck is still probably a 4-year plus. Once we get the money to get it at the rate that ladder trucks are being produced right now. Community contribution requests. So these all came in the last month or so. First District Health came in lower than they had the previous year. Minot Area Council of the Arts came in the same as they'd had the last few years. Commission on Aging came in the same. Service-based and transportation came down a bit lower than what council approved for them in 2026. Just trying to keep it on a level playing field. Again, my recommendation here is to reduce these a bit by 3%. Service-based and transportation, I think this model that we're currently going through is still new and probably needs a deeper dive to get just more fidelity on that number. But for the purposes of this presentation, I just took 3% out of what Mr. Darrell Francis sent over to us. But just to sustain that level of funding over time, I just believe we need to do a little bit more of a deeper dive as a whole team on that particular, supporting that particular function. Moving on to enterprise funds.
Okay, members of the council, this again is just a graph that shows the depiction and the changes of anticipated enterprise revenues, 26 versus 27. You'll see a slight decrease here from 26 to 27, and primarily that is due to the decrease in the tax levy that is going to enterprise funds, primarily in the airport and the cemetery. It's offset a little bit by some proposed rate increases for sewer, water, and storm sewer. That's why it changes the percentage in the graph for the charges for services versus other revenues. And these can also be influenced quite a bit depending on what they have for capital projects that year. And we have another slide that shows some of the spending for the enterprise funds, and airport in particular varies considerably just because of the large capital projects that they have that come along with federal and state funding sources to go with that.
Okay, and just a little bit more detail here on the enterprise funds. I think we might have a typo on Minot International Airport. I think they went up some. No, they did go down significantly. They did. It's interesting when you look at Minot International Airport. You look at storm sewer, water, storm sewer, sanitation. A lot of these just fluctuate year over year, like a sine curve, just based on capital that is coming in. In the airport, it could be FAA is funding projects. There could be more projects in one year versus another. So where there's a revenue, there's a corresponding expense. But year over year, the Minot International Airport, the cemetery, parking ramps going down a bit, and some increases with sanitation, water source, sewer, storm sewer, enterprise funds. All of the equipment that Jason Sorensen and his team have requested and require to operate, along with a piece of equipment for the cemetery, have been built into the enterprise funds and are in the budget, so about 1.4 million. On special revenue funds, I'm going to pass this one to, I think, Jen, are you going to take this?
Yep.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. As you are aware, the Magic Fund guidelines dictate that the city manager and the president, CEO of the chamber get together every year to prepare these proposals. I did sit in on that meeting and kind of helped them out with the different buckets, but these are kind of how the Magic Fund, that 15% of the first penny of sales tax will be allocated in the 2027 budget as proposed. The administration will cover the auditors, so all the AUP and development agreements that we have under the Magic Fund, they go through an annual audit to make sure that they are meeting the requirements of the development agreement. That costs us about $12,000 a year. The Chamber's contract, the Service Basin Planning Council, the General Fund Administration for $75,000, and then the Data Gathering Services, which was, I think it's a 3-partner agreement between Visit Minot, Chamber, and the City of Minot. So that total for the administration bucket will be $882,595. The primary sector, while it is fully maxed, we kind of earmarked the interest revenue that fund receives to go into the primary sector. That's what the interest is accruing based on that balance, so we thought that was appropriate. They also recommended maxing out the state program matching funds, so bringing that bucket balance up to the max of $1 million, and then the remainder going to fund flood control maintenance for $347,905. And then the next slide just shows the history of funding those community contributions that are funded by sales tax. So the chamber, as well as the Task Force 21 portion, Service Basin Planning Council, historically has always been funded by sales tax, but that was a change in 2026. So that's why those stars are there to show that was actually funded by the property tax levy in 2026. These requests came in and we kept them fully funded at 100%.
Okay, so for our special revenue funds, just an overall wrap-up. Minot Public Library, again, they came in with a decreased budget year over year. Some increases in flood control maintenance, Minot City Transit, and the NAS Biota plant. So as we've discussed with NAS, not operational yet. We expect that we're going to need an additional personnel to run it. Vice, we're currently being reimbursed for 9 personnel. We believe we need up to 15 personnel, and we'll continue to work to get that fully reimbursed. So this is the team. This is the budget number that Jason and Justin Seifert and team put together to what they believe will be the operational expenses for 2027. But we'll know more once we're operating it and get a little bit more fidelity on true actual costs. So personnel, I'll go ahead and have Kelly Beck brief the next couple slides, please.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's gone into personnel for 2027. It's been a bit of a balancing act. It's as positions come open, we scrutinize each of them individually. We take a look, we review the position descriptions. We want to make sure that they're accurate and still reflect the work that's needing to be done. Anytime a position comes open, it's reviewed by the city manager and approved by the city manager to post, and then once again to be filled once an offer is made or when we go to make an offer. The intention behind this is to look at work holistically and determine how the work is being done, and if it's being done the appropriate way as we continue to try and grow, see if we can shift things a bit strategically to become more streamlined across departments. Some examples that come to mind are in cemetery and building and grounds. They've recently put up a posting that is a shared position between the two. In some cases, particularly with some general fund roles that we'll talk about soon, those roles are just being held. They're not funded. It doesn't mean that they're not needed. It just means that we are not currently filling them. For example, our PIO position, the assistant city manager, the finance clerk are all positions that we have held in a general fund capacity over the last several months. They're still being held into the 2027 budget as unfunded as well. To touch a bit on the pay plan, we met with civil service back in July. Their recommendation on July 17th was to approve a new structure. We had a second meeting on July 25th where that structure, during the public commentary, civil service ultimately decided that we should hold on the implementation of a new pay structure and continue to follow the same pay structure as 2026. Their recommendation at civil service was to also implement a CPI based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in addition to the step progression that takes place annually, depending upon where you are in the pay structure. It's either 5%, 2.5%, or if you're capped out, it's that 2%. There wasn't a specific time period given for that CPI adjustment, what to use. There's a variety of sources out there. That number comes in anywhere between 2.8 and 4.2 or 5%, depending upon your source. So that's the pay plan recommendation that was included with this as well. In terms of Chapter 24 Personnel Code, that was updated. You all approved it on first reading tonight. It was mainly a lot of policy language update to reflect what's in Chapter 24 to make sure it matches our current policies that we have in place as a city. The other piece is that we did add language that council may direct city manager to offer a voluntary separation incentive plan. I know that that's been talked about quite a bit as we go through this budgeting process. What that would be, the intention behind that is to have be offered at the direction of council. It would allow the city manager to offer 3 months of salary for anyone who would qualify. Our intention is to follow state and federal guidelines with that. You'd have to put in an application. You can't have already submitted your retirement notice. You open up the application period. The department heads would sign off, as well as HR and the city manager. It's not something we have to do, but it's another tool in our arsenal, or our toolbox, so to speak, should we not be happy with where the employee numbers are at the end of this. Not all applications would be approved. For example, if we had 20 firefighters say, yes, I'd like a voluntary separation incentive plan, odds are pretty good we're not going to take all 20. That seems like poor long-term strategic planning. The goal is not to have everyone resign or want to leave the city. Rather, if council's direction continues to be that we're overstaffed, this gives us another tool beyond traditional attrition and reduction in force to help get staffing numbers where they're desired to be. On this slide, you can see that these are our 12 current authorized and unfunded positions. There's 3 in the police department, a law enforcement specialist. There's some in engineering, transit, street, shop, library, and finance, and then, of course, 2 in the city manager's department funding. That amount is roughly $900,000 of positions that are authorized but not funded at this point.
Yeah, and if I could, excuse me, Kelly, but so, Mr. Mayor, Council, I would refer to these also. I mean, they're still unfunded requirements to me. Truly do not know where we go, what the true impact is if these are not funded long term. We're committed to looking at ways to transform our current operation and to see if we can better utilize people and combine positions. But that all hasn't been completed. So I just want to foot stomp that although these are not in the budget, to a tune of $875,000, I would still refer to them as unfunded requirements, that there is a point that potentially I might have to come back to you during year of execution and say, with a budget amendment, and here's why I believe we need to fund this position, and fully explain that to you. But that's where we are with these positions. So I think we were about 5 short of excluding the police department. We had put a hiring freeze on about 5 positions a couple of months ago, and you can see it's grown a bit since then.
Lastly, I'll just touch real quick on salary and benefits. This is the city manager's recommendation. It does not include that CPI adjustment as recommended by civil service. Should you all want to do that CPI adjustment, that's something that council ultimately decides. We put civil services recommendation is different than the city manager's recommendation. I just want to highlight that piece. There's currently 465 positions across the city. 12 of them are unfunded. The health insurance increase is still at a 0. We haven't received the rates yet. Those typically don't come in until August. And I don't know if you had more to add on that, Jenna or Dave.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a $30 decrease. So we planned for a 7% increase. If you remember a couple months ago, as Kelly Beck had mentioned, that we haven't seen our full renewal quite yet, so we don't know where that's going to land for the final. We planned for a 7% increase for health insurance premiums in the budget currently as it stands. And then any vacant position, historically, we've always budgeted that they're going to fill it as a family plan, which is drastically higher for the employer share. I think it's roughly about $24,000, where a single plan is funded by the city at 100% for only $11,000. So we baked in that any vacant position is budgeted for a single plan. Obviously, open enrollment happens in the fall, so there's many changes. This is just kind of a point in time calculation, but so that's why it's very close. But we did intend for a 7% premium increase or plan for one, but we'll know more in the coming months.
Okay, move on to infrastructure. So back to City Engineer Lance Meyer presented the CIP a couple months ago and where we are. So all we've done on this is taking the design fee out of for the fire training classroom. Not exactly sure what the impact of the new Superfund site as that goes over to the park district to operate, how that's going to impact our training area. So we didn't want to put money into something without knowing really how that plays out. So we're just kind of postponing that for now. And then this proposed budget does not include the $5 million that we had originally talked about and the council had talked about last year of a $5 million year over year, 26, 27, 28 out of general fund cash reserves. So the budget that I'm proposing does not include that $5 million. I know you'll get more detail on this at the upcoming special council meeting on Monday as we tour the police department, and we can have further discussion on that. But right now, this particular proposed budget does not include $5 million out of general fund cash reserves in 2027 for the police department renovation. So just move into final impacts. Big picture, overall budget, not quite a $2 million increase when you include all of our various funds, 0.8% year over year change from 26 to 27. Again, in the general fund, property tax portion of it, proposing 26.7 be levied for property tax, general fund cash reserve use of $2 million, and we're currently projecting city rates across the board to increase about 3 to 5%.
Okay, this slide is just again a depiction of the entire budget by revenue source. We do caveat in there, we did the calculation as the values currently sit, and that gets further refined as we move through the year as well. Currently, we calculate the maximum available under the cap limits to be $29.389 million for the property tax. Again, just to point out the differences in the budget from 26 to 27, it's slightly up. That coincides with the budget. We have to have enough revenue identified for all the expenditures that are being appropriated by the council. There's a slight increase in the charges for services. That's a component of the increases that we've talked about already, as well as some anticipated demand increases to go along with that. The intergovernmental, that is driven primarily by the difference year over year in the capital projects, primarily, again, airport. One other note to be made here is the Department of Water Resources has changed their match policy for water main projects, and we've had some of that in the past, and we won't have that going forward, so that'll all be funded by debt issuances, SRF debt. So that's also a bit of a change in the intergovernmental section here depicted in this slide. This next slide that we have coming up here is showing the debt or the overall tax burden for the 6 largest cities in North Dakota. We've had a lot of discussion over this in the past and comparing ourselves to other cities. This compares using all of the tax sources, sales tax, special assessments, and property tax, and combining them. We've also included a calculation based on per capita tax burden. So you can see how Minot compares here with the other 5 major cities in North Dakota. And when we look at overall tax burden across these cities, Minot is the lowest of all of the 6 major cities. We did some calculations, and again, this is based on 26 information because we don't have 27 budget information for these other cities, so their numbers can change a little bit as well. We did a calculation of what the proposed budget for 2027, as the city manager has proposed, if we increase the property taxes to what he is proposing, our per capita calculation would be $1,139.66. So we would still be significantly cheaper than or less of a tax burden than the other cities altogether. One thing I would want to point out here as well, this doesn't include Hub City funding, and the only other city on this chart that gets Hub City funding is Williston, and they do get significantly more Hub City dollars than the city of Minot does, so that is not included in this presentation. The next slide that we have just shows the graph again, showing the use of general fund reserves over time. It's just a graphical depiction of the white line on the bottom is the statutory limit imposed by ordinance. The center line is including of the additional 2/12 reserves, and then just the use of not the use of reserves, but the general fund cash reserves balance over time, and those numbers getting closer together. One thing we want to point out is this does not include any additional funding for the Minot Police Department project. If there were additional funding or additional money to be allocated towards that project, that would either presumably have to come out of some other revenue source or additional use of cash reserves. That'll put us a lot closer to our limits there. And also another thing to point out is this doesn't include funding for a number of capital equipment purchases, and primarily the big one on the list is the ladder truck. When we were going through the process of prioritizing these purchases, that was the highest priority on the list, partially due to the condition of the truck, that it has to be reliable because we don't have very many of them, and then also the lead time to get a new one of those trucks. So it was identified as the highest priority. However, it's not being funded in this budget proposal either. One other thing I'd like to point out with this as well, and we talked a little bit earlier about it, is the ability to cash flow projects that are on a reimbursement basis. Rapid reduction of the reserve balances could impact bond rating, which would impact the cost of any future bond issuances that the city would do. And then the other thing to go with that is we'd be in a position where we wouldn't have the ability to do some of these projects. And some of them that stand out is, for example, the 3rd Street Bridge Replacement Project. There's going to be a significant cost to that, to the city, even on a cost share basis. When that comes forward, if we don't have the money in reserves to be able to fund that, we wouldn't have the ability to raise the tax funding, the property taxes to do that with the 3% caps. The alternative would be to issue debt to finance that replacement project.
Okay, just wrapping it up, just to kind of go over, besides the incredible work staff did to look at every line item and reduce where possible, and as you saw earlier, the vast majority of the departments came in with a lower budget than last year. So that met my intent. So I appreciate that. But however, there's still a significant amount of items that aren't funded, right? So starting with, again, 12 positions that are identified as still being required, but just not authorized but not funded in this particular budget proposal. Eliminating the $5 million in general fund cash reserves that was originally targeted for the police department renovation. Also, which we hadn't mentioned earlier, so I need to mention, is also reducing the $10 million target for street maintenance that we had in city engineers' original budget proposal. Reduce that down to $9.1 million. So again, that doesn't keep up with what we want to get to on our pavement condition index. And I think city engineer Lance Meyer has briefed in the past, somewhere around 14 million is what the target number would be, Lance, over year in today's dollars. So again, it's not back to where we were many years ago, but again, it's a reduction on what we were originally identifying. Again, as Dave mentioned, pushing the fire department ladder truck back at least 1 year. That's 1.7 million came out of the original budget that were proposed to me to review. So that's kind of the big items there, along with, again, just the fine work that the entire staff did to find some reductions. So alternatives that I just put them here. I know you know these anyway, but things to consider, as we go forward is to continue using general fund cash reserves a bit more than what I'm proposing in $2 million in this year to cover operational expenditures. Potentially reduce expenses in other ways, maybe through further personnel by executing a VSIP. Just knowing that I'll be coming back whenever we do that to keep you posted on what a potential reduction in service is, because I don't want anybody going to anything blind. If we're going to make a reduction in expenses, we owe to you and the public what we believe a reduction in service may be. And then, again, we're calculating that the max, the cap that for this year, the max could be close to 29.4 million. So, again, there's that space to move towards if you believed it was necessary. Again, on the horizon, as we know, we talked about, department is continue moving forward with the police department renovation. We'll get a better brief on that on Monday. I'm proposing that we have 3 of their 85 sworn officers unfunded. Like we did last year, I would request that if we can get those positions funded, that you authorize that and we can come forward with a budget amendment for those positions. And again, potentially some of the other 9 as that plays out and we learn a little bit more the impact of not filling those positions. We all know we have aging roads, we have aging fleet. Pushing maintenance from year to year is not optimal. So we take a close look at that. Third Street Bridge, whether it's repairs or eventual replacement is on the horizon. We've been working hard, and we'll be sharing more with you here in the near term about potential relocation for the municipal court. Stay focused on NOS and flood protection, cast iron water line replacement. You know, so big things that are out there that we always need to keep our eye on. Again, next steps, as we talked earlier, we can have time for some questions here, but also we can have questions on the July 20th council meeting on Monday. We can do that under miscellaneous and discussion. And again, just the reminder to have this, have your preliminary budget approved by the 3 August council meeting, and then we'll get that over to county. And again, that sets the max of what can be levied this year. You can go down from that number, but you can't go up. And then we had originally talked about a public hearing date of the 14th of September, and we would like to change that to September 8th. And we can talk more about that, and we can send that out. But we would like to push that first public hearing date up about 1 week. With that, I appreciate your time and attention, and thank you to the entire team, and thank you, council, for your participation in this year's budget process. Somebody asked me earlier, how's it going? I said, I think we're at the, I don't want to steal from Winston Churchill, but, I think we're at the end of the beginning. And again, that's what it is. It's a process. So we worked hard over the last 6 months. This is just another step in the process. And then we'll refine this more over the next few weeks, and we still have 2 more months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Any questions for the city manager on the presentation or information?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessum.
Thank you. I tried to let my colleagues go, but if nobody's going to talk, then I'm going to talk about the budget. So this may be more of a commentary than a set of questions. There may be some sprinkled in as we go. I want to start here. So Tom, nice job. Part of my focus as we made a hire in our next city manager was someone who is going to focus on the operation, and I think we're seeing that, and I appreciate that. I think what you are bringing out of the staff is exactly what I would have envisioned. So thank you for that hard work. And I know that it's been hard work because the parts that I've been involved in have been hard work from my side, and that's not full time. And so I appreciate that. And to the team, to the department heads, we got a bunch of them here. Thank you for your hard work, because I think in my opinion, we're seeing the fruit of a couple years worth of hard work of different thinking. We're taking a different approach. As you look back at some of the numbers, in my opinion, we were a runaway train. You look back at the 2024 budget where we had pay increases of over 8%. We had a budget that jumped multiple millions of dollars from a property tax perspective. And a big part of my focus since getting elected is to start to right that ship. Now, I want to be clear about where we're actually at as we sit here today in the middle of 2026 looking at the 27 budget. That hard work, and maybe some would call it the brinksmanship of spending down reserves and getting us into a tighter financial situation, is what it took to actually bend the curve to close to flat. That's all we've done so far. Our main operating departments still go up about almost 1% in this budget, and this is the city manager's budget. It's not done yet. That is what it took to change the old adage of we need to reduce the rate of increase in our budget. That's all we've done so far. We haven't made major cuts. We haven't gutted whole departments. We haven't done any of those things. And what it took to do that is pressure from the income side of the equation. And so that's where we sit today. You know, when I look at the 2026 burdens for across the state, yes, we are the lowest, and look at what it took to get there. Again, immense pressure from a different council saying it actually matters what the people pay for the services that they get. Yes, we are the lowest. What we contemplate with the budget as it sits right now is moving back away from that and going back to the 2024 path and starting forward again on a trajectory that is not sustainable, and we know that it's not. And so as we look forward at what we've got ahead of us, in my opinion, we still have to decide, do we have a trajectory that is yet sustainable? And do we have to make this major jump back? You know, those of you that just went through a campaign, I watched the debates. The questions were there. Are you going to raise property tax? This contemplates a huge increase in property tax that the people will feel in their pocketbooks immediately. The average of about $300 just from the city side alone. And we don't even know what the rest of the taxing entities are going to do. So as you look forward and you face the people that supported you during the campaign, if you're prepared to move forward with the budget as we've got it right now and this amount of money, then I'd like to hear how we rectify those two things. And it's hard. We all went through that. We all faced the constituents that voted for us. We faced the people who actually pay the bills. And so I think what we're seeing is a dose of reality. The dose of reality that I take away from it is that we've done a wonderful job of reducing the rate of growth so far. We've done a wonderful job of getting the mindsets right to give us the opportunity to go where we need to go. And now we actually have to get to the hard work of executing on what we do next. And in my opinion, what we do next is not rocketing the property tax back up and undoing the hard work of 2 years and all the great work that the staff have done to get there, because they have took the brunt of that work. And so, you know, just to kind of sum up now, you know, I do have a couple questions. I don't know that we've got to get into a lot of these details, and I guess I'll defer a little bit to the rest of the team. We've got a couple more discussions on this because there's very specific things that I want to look at. And, you know, Dave, I think you mentioned Hub City funding. We're treating that completely different. It's in a different part of the budget now. You know, I've got some things about, you know, why are recycling charges up when trash collections are down? I mean, there's different things that we're looking at there. What are the flood control acquisitions? So I think I'll hold on some of those. And we'll talk more about it and what the actual details are going forward. But again, I'll just leave it here with everybody. What we're seeing is, in my opinion, the right direction for where we should have gone and what the last 2 years has brought us. And now the question is how do we sustain those gains and how do we avoid giving them all back immediately? Thanks.
Alderman Samuelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking through this, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Mike said, but the city manager has done a lot of hard work, and I think it's been fantastic, and so has staff. You know, I look at a few things, and you know, one of the things that always comes up for me is our priorities, and it came, you know, from a survey. I'm going to tell you guys again, I think our staff does a fantastic job on snow removal. I have a few complaints here and there, but they do a fantastic job. And I'm just going to say again about our streets. We do a fantastic job on streets. If you guys ever go drive around anywhere else, I would challenge you to go to Fargo and drive around and look at what they're charging for property tax and things like that. There are other places in the state that don't come close to what Minot does with the money that we have. I'm going to do a shout out because I don't know who is doing the contracting on 16th Street, but I think they've done amazing. It's been hard to go through there, but it looks to me like they're getting close to being done. And I figured it was going to be all summer. So I don't know, again, who it is or who's doing it, but I think they're doing awesome. We need to have them do some more of our other work around town. I can tell you that. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up is, you know, there was part of this where it had the decreases in departments. And I know that police is up, and we figured that it would be. And I'm trying to remember, but you look at our building and safety and community development is down 17%. And we have community sponsors. There's a few of those that have gone down. But our economic development, and I said this from the beginning, we're doing this the wrong way. And we're spending the same on it and we're getting nothing from it. We're losing population. And everybody always tells me it's a long-term investment that we're doing with this to reap benefits. I've been here since 1989, and I don't see the benefits of all the money that we've spent on economic development. And there are some stories out there, there's some really good ones, but there's been some really, really bad ones. And we still have a couple that we haven't dealt with yet. And I think we need to quit focusing that, and we need to focus on the people. In my opinion, we're spending way too much on that. And our economic development, when it comes to the Magic Fund, I see no reductions there. Our building and safety, community development, is down 17% in what their budget was. And economic development, nothing. I think there's some things that need to be done there, and I'm just gonna, I guess the last thing I'm gonna say is I am not gonna support a budget that raises property tax. I absolutely will not do it. The citizens deserve it, and I've been waiting for the time that we could say that Minot has the lowest tax. And from the facts there, they prove it. And eventually other people are gonna realize it too. And they're gonna be coming here. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, I guess I'll just offer this. I think the use of reserves over the last couple of years was a good thing. It did reduce the property tax burden on our citizens. It was pretty aggressive. We used a lot of reserves. And now the result is that, of course, that's not sustainable forever. Reserves have limitations. And so the fact that without the ability to do that, we need to walk back a little bit shouldn't be surprising to anybody. You know, fiscal responsibility means providing the revenue that's necessary to fund city services. That's what we have to do. And to, re-engineer the way things get done is not easy to do. And so I guess I would agree with Alderman Blessum that we have started down a path, but it's a process. And I think the city manager's budget tries to continue that process, but also reflects realities of how much change you can execute in a given budget period or even a couple of years. And so, we have all kinds of things to look at, to go through. And I appreciate all the work the city manager did. to give us this starting point. And the quote about we're at the end of the beginning is probably apt. So thank you for that.
I'll move adjournment.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Meeting is adjourned.